my name is Karina Miki Douglas-Takayesu, and I'm running as candidate in Timmins Ward 5 for council. And actually, the inspiration of the run, I was actually giving consideration in the previous municipal election, 2014. Just seeing, I work for the city of Timmins, and trying to get a better understanding of how things work at the local government level. And I'll give you a bit of my background first, and then I'll sort of go into a little more of my reasoning for wanting to run. So I came to Timmins 9 years ago. I was hired as a reference librarian at the Timmins Public Library. I'm originally from Vancouver, British Columbia, but I grew up in several communities in Ontario and British Columbia. And I largely grew up outside of School Rock Falls. I graduated from Kapuskasing District High School in 1999, and then I went to university down south. I have a bachelor's degree from Queen's University in psychology and English, and a Master of Library and Information Science from the University of Western Ontario. I worked between my bachelor's and master's degree for 1 year at the call center in 2004-2005. So I did reside here in Timmins for about a year before coming back, and first main reason that I ended up in Timmins again was that this is the place where I was actually hired in my field as a professional. And originally it was going to be just a couple of years, and then turned into well over 9 years. And the reason I'm staying is because there's other aspects of quality of life of being able to develop myself as a photographer, an artist, able to do sort of different types of programming in the library that are kind of unique in the setting in Northern Ontario that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do down south. And my motivation is in my day-to-day work as a librarian. I've answered thousands of questions in almost a decade. And I've seen how liberating it is when people have even just a simple query and there's unknown information out there, and when they find that information, it's just very liberating to them. But I've also seen that there's a lot of challenges with accessibility to resources that people don't have. There's a lot of assumptions coming down from both the provincial and the federal government relying on online accessibility that people just don't have. Even there is not infrastructure to support the needs that they have. I've seen just like things where people trying to find affordable housing, the types of questions they get. Just even general information about the history of the city of Timmins, a lot of that has either sort of been lost or has to really be dug up. There's information that's either because of changing media, things that just weren't recorded historically. There's been a lot of things that have been lost, and I want to be in a position where I'd be able to better help people to connect them with resources, that kind of information, and also to sort of give a bit of communication back and forth between the way municipal government works and the needs of the people. My platform is sort of looking at 4 facets. The first is the accessibility to resources. This has been sort of my biggest motivation for running, is running into people that need to have stuff done online and they just cannot get to it because more and more is being digital, but they either don't have the background knowledge, the computers, or there's just not even like, if you're going out to Nova Scotia, there's not even the infrastructure there for high-speed internet unless you're paying a large amount of money. So these kinds of things, and if I cannot actually change something at a higher level of administration, at least try to connect people better to make that transition more smooth. Another thing is arts and culture. I've been on the Porcupine Art Club since I first came here in 2009. I've been a member. I've been also involved through other things, so behind the scenes in theater. My husband is a musician in the Timmins Symphony Orchestra. The biggest thing that we have a challenge for all of us in the arts is trying to actually find a physical space that's dedicated to the arts. We're always sort of having to make do with other buildings and things that are owned by other private individuals or organizations that were never actually dedicated to the needs of the arts. And I was involved with the Timmins 2020, the Cultural Master Plan. In one of the things they identified the value of the arts. There have been sort of initial steps put together towards having an arts council. We did have one in the past and trying to get another one again. But there has never been anything really for sort of a dedicated infrastructure, either by retrofitting a building or seeing, if something could be constructed that would be dedicated to those specific needs rather than having to make do. Another facet is tying in with the access to resources and sort of having arts and culture in the community is also youth retention. Of course, it would be unfair to expect a lot of high school students to go to not go off to other schools where they're specially in education. I certainly had to go down south to get my university degree, and the same thing with my master's degree. There's actually only 7 universities in Canada that offer that, so it's not something that I would be able to do from home. But the thing is, what can we offer to attract people back here now we have the young professionals to work in their respective fields? You need to have some sort of sense of either safety, well-being. I've heard from some youth, just being questioned informally, would you be coming back to Timmins? What are some of the issues? And the question is, there's just sort of a sense of isolation. There's not enough to do. If they're considering raising children here 10 years down the road, what kind of access to resources are the children have? I was in my very late 20s when I started working here at the library. It took a few years to build up and get established in the community. And what was it that kept me here? Well, it was things like having an outlet in the arts. It was also being able to have a little more say in what I wanted to do programming. So it's sort of, if your workplace, can offer something more unique that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get down south. So maybe it's a matter of also sort of trying to look at the community from fresh eyes, but certainly want to see more incentives, proactive, to get young professionals to come back here. So that's my 4 facets. It's going to be, again, sort of accessibility to resources, arts and culture, looking at sort of improving that, youth retention, young professionals coming back, and community well-being. Well, one of the things, where I've been working, and we have been seeing an increase from, you're hearing the phrase, the opiate crisis. It's a Canada-wide, North American-wide issue that's been going on. And it's more trying to come up with sort of safety strategies, preventative measures. In my work, I'm not a social worker. I'm working in the public service sector, but we do see a lot of people coming in that have issues. There's certainly things like the CMHA. They've been dealing with a lot of people. We have now, there's actually discussion in the actually the public library world of having people being trained for narcotics overdose kits and that kind of thing, and it hasn't come yet to where we would be doing this at a local level in Timmins, but it's certainly something like when you have to think that people that are working frontline public service staff that are being we have to have a police background check for vulnerable sector screening, so that means for children or let's say adults that have special needs, or that we are also having the people that have to consider maybe doing narcotics overdose training. And where is it going to go? Is it going to be also, you're going to have to try train bank tellers and things? And there's not really sort of been a public discussion on, okay, what can we do? If we're at this level where around the province there's been similar organizations discussing it and actually training their staff members, what can we do proactively before we end up having to have every second person learning how to do narcotics overdose training? Why is bringing the narcotics in? Where is this coming from? What other possible venues are there for people as an outlet? There's certainly been a lot of community safety discussions. For example, the BIA did have a discussion with the police a few months ago, just seeing, because there is a lot of concern again, anything from petty theft to just safety in general and public behavior. But again, that's sort of limited to one group. And certainly, people working in the businesses and working with the police, that's good to have, but what about a larger public forum too? What about the people that are maybe working in nonprofits organizations or working in education fields are going to start seeing this? We need sort of a collaboration with all these community groups that are being directly or indirectly affected by these larger issues. I work in, of course, a facility that was actually one of their contention when it was being proposed, and it is largely funded through taxpayer dollars, but it's also coming out from other funding sources such as the province, and that is the public library. I pay taxes myself, having a mortgage, and I've seen what kind of value added you think that you're getting from that tax-based resource. Now, of course, there's a slight bias since I'm actually working in the facility where part of my municipal taxes are going, but I can see at that level, one of the things is that I have that access to see, this would be the money back I'm getting. For example, be able to access certain online resources that would be very costly on my own. For example, just electronic books. If you were to subscribe to a service, you might be looking at $50 to $75 a year, whereas if you have your library card, you get it for free. But one of the things is people are getting the sense that, oh, all these decisions are being made, but we've had no input on it. And certainly there are resources that we need. The Archidillion Sports Spikes is a nice pool. I've been there, and I do see that it does feel its age, so it's one of those things to consider. But at the same time, the road right out in front, Ontario Boulevard, has had multiple shutdowns because of failing infrastructure on the water mains. And the question is, certain things, can we get more funding from other levels as well? I mean, we have had to be pretty reliant on using municipal taxes. The issue with Algonquin Riverside Highway 101 is that it is a main highway that cuts through the community, and there's a certain point where the provincial funding sort of cuts off, and then it goes through under the municipal responsibility, and then it picks up again as provincial. But if you want to keep that actually as a provincial class highway, there should be more advocating to get further funding from that. I'm always curious to know when people say, oh, my taxpayer dollars shouldn't go to X, Y, Z. What do you want to see your taxpayers go? What do you feel would be giving your value back in the community? And I mean, it's a lot of times it's also hard to see. So maybe also more sort of transparency and disclosure. Okay, if you're going to have to pay, let's say, pretending that $1,000 of your taxes went towards road repair, okay, what exactly would be the breakdown of that? More disclosure. Maybe people then would feel like, oh, they're getting their value back on the tax. And I think the biggest thing is if you could just get that sense that you're getting something as value added for your tax, and sort of maybe not necessarily shift the attitude, but at least you could see that things are working. It's a little more optimistic that way. To be able to see the whole picture from start to finish, it gives you a much better idea of what's going on in the community. And certainly I encourage a lot of people, just to take the time, come in, sit through a meeting. You don't necessarily get the same perspective even if you're watching the playback afterwards, because it's sort of like you're in the contest of screen. You can pause it, you can skip to the parts you want, but if you watch from start to finish, I think you get a much better appreciation of the things that are going on. One of the things I do find that's been difficult is when there's been proposed projects, the public forums that they put out are always scheduled at times where it's very difficult for the public to attend. A lot of the Timmins 2020 strategic plan, those meetings were held in the middle of the day when most people are working. So when people say, oh, well, we never get a chance to provide our input, it's also because the timing for public forums and that hasn't been optimal. And certainly if we're doing things like the bigger projects, there's a question of what will happen with this aquatic center proposal when the new council takes over. It's really want more opportunity for public input that's available at a time convenient to the public. Well, I've actually had the chance to see sort of Stars of Thunder from two perspectives. In 2017, I attended just one concert with more just personal preference. The lineup that I seen the previous year was not one that was of large interest. I wasn't familiar with most of the artists, so I attended one concert, and then I just sort of seen things from the outside and observed. And in 2018, I'd seen the lineup previously in the fall, and I decided that it was actually the value added would be more to go and actually invest in the passes to attend the concert. So I did attend most of the concerts this year. And so it got a good perspective. I mean, certainly in terms of the end cost for tickets for people, you compare it to events down south, and for the length of time, and when you break it down over 8 days, whether you're getting a VIP or a general admission pass, it is a very good deal. And the other thing that I was able to see actually being in the audience this year is that there were a lot of adults, people with special needs, people that had certainly mobility and access challenges that would not have been able to have an opportunity to attend something like this if it was out of town. I was watching one family, and they had a family member in a wheelchair who was quite limited, and it was nice that family could come in every day. If the family member got tired, they could go home, versus if they were to try and actually have to invest in staying in a hotel, even like if you were over in the next community, it would be very costly. If something were to happen, like a medical emergency, that would be a very large financial burden. So here, people were able to access that. But certainly, the biggest challenge is the fact that it's been operating now 2 years on a deficit. Know a little bit in the 2017 was, of course, the initial idea was to have it as part of the Canada 150 celebrations. And I know that there were grants applied for, and actually some of the funding was not given. Some of the grants were turned down, so that's where they had to come up with the additional funding for sponsors. But one thing is, the 8 days is definitely long, and I mean, I've experienced the sentiment from people that were helping out. I did also help volunteer in the 2018 Stars and Thunder, and it is a bit long. It's taking away quite a few sort of employees from the different departments in the cities that tying them up. And I mean, certainly it's good for people's morale, you know, to get the chance to move into another venue and work on things, but it does get actually quite long in 8 days. I've heard sentiment, a lot of people that are in favor of Stars and Thunder, enjoying, you know, sort of seeing Timmins is now sort of on the concert circuit. They even feel that the festival could be dialed back a few days. And I mean, initially it's good to see that the municipality did put the funding in it, because I'm looking at larger concerts and they're not even 8 days long, but certainly the ones down south, they're having sponsorships like the Ontario Lottery Gaming. There's a lot of sort of corporate private, but there might be things like you're getting sponsorship from either organizations or for-profit companies, or that may not necessarily align sort of with the values of the general public. I would love to see it sort of continue on, but it would have to definitely be sort of changed, much shorter, and definitely, and ideally, it should be something that the city might have like a portion of funding given each year, but definitely not the large $1.8 million of that in the deficits that we're seeing that should be brought down onto the taxpayers. So it has to be sort of a way that it can be handed off, worked on more strategically. I mean, certainly in the 2 years that it was run, for the short time frames that were set up, they were actually able to achieve quite a bit. So it's something, again, it's high risk, and there's a lot of sentiment on, but I would say, you know, give it a couple more chances and see, but don't give it the opportunity to think, oh, this is always something that's going to be 100% in the city's fund. So it has to be like eventually handed off to another organization, whether it's going to be like sort of a large charity fundraiser for a collective of nonprofits, or whether it has to be largely under a corporate sponsorship that's sort of neutral. A big challenge with the sort of, I guess, the ward system in general is like Ward 5 is basically covered from about Highway 655 to the bridge of Outagamie River north-south, so we do certainly have probably a larger number of apartment buildings sort of for lower income housing and stuff in the area. We certainly need to have more. I remember just a couple of years ago that there was a proposal of having an apartment building down on the southern side towards Earlwall Road, down on to the far on Mount Joy South. One of the things though is when you're proposing sort of that kind of living opportunity is we're sort of like also have a overall into sort of a set of food deserts. If you were going down Algonquin Boulevard, with the exception of the food land that's over by Airport Road, almost everything has to be within a 500 meter to 1 kilometer radius of Algonquin Boulevard. So any sort of housing, if you were going to put it further south or north in the city, well then are you going to also have a public transit infrastructure that's going to support? Of course, the other thing is we have a downtown business area. We've seen a lot of businesses come and go, a lot of closures, sort of empty space sitting. Some of the owners, of course, have just retired it out, but the buildings are sitting there empty. And every year that the buildings are set unattended, there's also the risk of more sort of companies. So what is there we could do to sort of bring back more people into the downtown core and to make it a little more lively? People talk, oh, I don't feel safe in the downtown core. Certain hours of the day I don't want to be in there, but it's like, well, if there was more sort of activity in the downtown core, it might discourage sort of this criminal behavior and these concerns of safety, because now you're going to have more people there. So definitely having more sort of, not just as an individual councillor, but having the council itself sort of making itself more present in the community, I think is definitely one thing that we need to improve on. Like I said, for the last 9.5 years, I've been working in the frontline sort of public service. I've heard a lot from people within the community, and I've also learned a lot from people that are outside. I've been involved in things like Science Timmins Astronomy Club, Porcupine Art Club, been involved with different theaters, so I've had a feel for like the different areas in sort of arts and culture, in science, education, all these things that are also the schools that are in Ward 5. So I've had a chance indirectly to see a lot of things, and I've met a lot of people one-on-one, but now I want to use the skills that I've gained over the past 9 years, the knowledge too, of having worked in one sort of section, and to be able to convey that information to a much more broad audience and help people on a larger level. So the setting I work in, it's usually people that voluntarily come in, asking questions, information, but it's a matter of sort of taking down that barrier of apprehension and also coming and presenting myself more in the community as a candidate for Ward 5 and as a councillor for Ward 5 to get people more aware. I mean, when you hear discussions always sort of on social media, oh, we need to get rid of the ward system, or why is council doing X, Y, Z? Well, a lot of the answers can either be found by looking online or just by asking, to have that dialogue. And there is a lot that you're just not aware of that's going on because people are not on a certain social media platform, or they just don't have the chance or the time to be able to come into council. So it's to make myself more known, and as a councillor to make my presence not just, oh, hi, I'm your Ward 5 rep, you can find me on the City of Timmins website, but that's it. It's to actually interact more with people, and that's what I want to try to do, having come from a background where I've been interacting with the public day in and day out, using those sorts of strategies and discussion to be able to communicate more with the public here as an active council member.